it's still funny. You know what I mean? It's still very funny. Does that make sense? Like, that's why I'm
Gowdy
cherishing
is joining us now as well, former South Carolina congressman and host of Sunday Night in America. Trey, jump on in here to the news, and what are your thoughts?
Well, it's a surprise, but quite candidly, we're not supposed to know what grand juries are doing. Ideally, this has been an exception. My position has not changed. I think it is the weakest of the four investigations. It's the wrong prosecutor, which you alluded to. It's the wrong fact pattern. You got statute of limitations issues. It's really a misdemeanor that put on a suit, and they want it to look like a felony. And I just look, when our justice system becomes a political tool, then we are on thin ice as a republic, and I think we are increasingly heading in that direction.
Trey, did Democrats just indict a former president over sex? Because we were told during the 90s that it was just
There
sex.
ain't no way. There ain't no fucking way, dude.
And it had nothing to do with politics,
Yes!
nothing to do with policy. Weren't we told that?
Yes!
And you have to understand, he says he didn't have sex with this woman. She had her hand out saying, hey, I'm not going to say anything unless you pay me. So either it's a consensual sexual encounter or it's a shakedown. And Democrats want to make that a felony?
I don't understand. Why would it be a fucking shakedown? It's literally just how they have explained the situation. That's what it is.
No longer going to prosecute prostitution was on that list. So it can't be about sex. It is the falsification of a business record, which, look, I'm not in favor of. You shouldn't do it. It's a misdemeanor.
But come on, come on, let him have this. Like that's Fox News defense is literally just come on, let him have it. Yeah, it's a little bit of crime.
Federal election law violation. The U.S. attorney's already taken a pass on this case. So again, I'm not speaking for the other jurisdictions that have the former president under investigation. I've always thought special counsel was factually the one where he was in the most peril. I don't know why you wouldn't go with your strongest case. And I can tell you right now, Jack Smith probably is not happy about it either, because prosecutors always go with your strongest factual and legal case. This ain't that.
Trey, this is Greg. How you doing?
Hello, Greg.
I miss you. Anyway, everybody always says, nobody is above the law. No one's above the law. It's so trite. But it feels like no one should be below the law either, and it feels like Trump has been made to be below the law. You don't have to meet any standards.
Yeah, it's so fucked up, dude. If there's one thing, Trump, if there's one thing that's happened to Trump, he's been prosecuted too much. That's what I'm always thinking. That's what I'm always saying. One funny fact about Trump is that they prosecute him too much. They over-prosecute him.
The law. So there are plenty of examples on both sides of our justice system being weaponized. So I would think that this would be something that we universally rejected, but unfortunately, if it's done to our opponents, we like it, and if it's done to our friends, we don't.
Mm-hmm.
The reason why it's significant is because, former presidents have gotten in trouble, or presidents have gotten in trouble with the law before. Like, there's that famous horse speed ticket. I forget who it was, but there have been instances like this, right? No, I'm not even talking about Nixon. No, I'm not. No, it never. Yeah, it was Grant, right? Obviously, former presidents have violated the law routinely, both during their tenure or even before their tenure. Like George W. Bush was drunk driving, got caught, but that was before he ever became president. So did Dick Cheney, by the way, but that's besides the point. Anyway, but that kind of stuff is whatever. Grant was speeding with a horse. That's why he got a couple speeding tickets with a horse. But never in the history of the United States of America have you ever had a former president get indicted for something. Even Richard Nixon didn't get it. So that's why this is unique.
Left have criticized the effort. This is a patently political prosecution, writes Jonathan Turley. A lot of reaction, obviously, pouring in from both sides of the aisle at this moment. The White House has been asked for comment. when asked, do you have comment? We don't. I believe that was the direct quote. So the White House is not weighing in this moment.
Yeah, why would they weigh in? Are you kidding me? Yeah, we do not comment on matters, so you can call us out as like blatantly moving the needle on an active, ongoing fucking indictment. Yeah, no shit. You know who shouldn't be speaking out on this, and yet he has? Donald Trump. Donald Trump regularly engaged in jury tampering by routinely fucking talking about the indictment before it happened. That is actually another fucking law-abiding moment for Donald Trump. Someone with that level of power and influence should not be able to just leak information that he was supposed to not be privy to because of some of the witnesses that were brought into the grand jury, in front of the grand jury, and then like openly stating that it's fucked up. Not illegal to talk about an indictment? No, that's not what I'm saying at all. I'm not saying it's illegal to talk about an indictment. I'm saying that you could absolutely consider it to be jury tampering if you get information about an indictment that you are not privy to because some of your former lawyers or people connected to your former lawyers have access to information that the public is not privy to, and then you publicly blast the fucking jury on the timeline, you publicly blast the people and try to motivate a potential insurrection in an effort to stop this from happening. He literally said, go out into the fucking streets, get out to the streets, and go out and protest this shit. Okay? That in and of itself is in my opinion, definitely, this is so libbed up. I mean, yeah, it's, for the record, I don't think anything's going to happen. I just want you to understand, I am an incredibly cynical person. I'm just simply reacting to the news and laughing about it. But that does not mean that I think that he has a serious shot at being fucking arrested and going to jail or anything like that. Do not misunderstand me. This is simply for entertainment.
I'm the candidate in the race who has the experience with Donald Trump. I was the chief deputy in the attorney general's office. We sued the Trump administration over 100 times.
And you believe it should happen?
I believe we have to hold them accountable.
You know, Andy Biggs just put out a note saying this is Trump derangement syndrome. It's infiltrated our judicial system. If they can come for him, they can come for anyone.
I don't like when people have been saying that a lot the last few weeks. They can come from you if you do the same thing that he did. It's not like he was just walking down the street.
Stop it, Jessica. No one's going after some random dude that settles an extortion case with a woman. Come on. It's because he's running for president.
Alvin Bragg had backed down from that position because it wasn't even popular within the ranks.
He
right?
was waiting for the timing to be right. And this was the timing.
I guess that it was.
Yes, technically his Secret Service would have to go into jail.
By how heavy this feels.
Alongside
and
Trump.
There are very few moments. I mean, I'm
which
no
is pretty
fan
awesome.
of the former president, and I'm not saying that he didn't commit a crime, but I am really struck by how powerful
Jesse
it feels
Waters
right
is
now
freaking pissed. He's in this mode.
Going to be 100% a note in every single history book that is going to come after this about what has gone on, and that has nothing to do with.
That's why Bragg did it.
I mean, it's pretty awesome and it's pretty funny. Like, here's a thing that these fucking dipshits would say, regardless of the material conditions of whoever the perpetrator of any particular crime is, regardless of the low-level offenses that they might be serving a fucking life sentence for, these fucking dickheads in suits would sit there and go, don't do the crime if you can't do the time. But when it comes down to like one of the most powerful motherfuckers on the planet, who literally was the most powerful motherfucker on the planet until he lost an election because Joe Brandon stole it from him, they're like, dude, we need to do prison abolition. Our prisons should be obsolete, right? Like a bunch of Angela Davises. You never would have thought. You never would have seen it. You love to see it. You hate to see it. Doesn't matter. They're like, it is really fucked up that the criminal justice system is so gross and the carceral state is so inhumane. It's like, the fuck do you mean, man? What do you mean? It is for the fucking working poor. For once, we should have a little bit of fun. We should have a little bit of fun at the expense of like an actually powerful person who's done a tremendously shitty job as president. And not only that, but like will receive just a fraction of the fucking fraction of the outcomes. I wish this was not done over the hush money for Stormy Daniels. I wish this was done over the RICO charges, the RICO case that's being developed for the past fucking however many years now with Fani Willis. She should be worrying more about her RICO case on Donald Trump for election tampering, which is a very valid case, instead of trying to make sure that like everyone who's ever rapped under Young Thug's record label goes to prison permanently. Okay? How about you work on this shit instead? I wish it was over that. I wish this indictment was actually over that RICO case, because that RICO case is actually a valid one, a legitimate one, a genuine, like that one is actually genuine. That one is actually a viable, viable and valid RICO charge that he could be hit with, because he actually did do something that is criminal, and he should go to jail over it. This one, he's just gonna get a fucking light pad. He's gonna get a tap. He's not even gonna get a slap on the wrist. He's gonna get a little bit of this on the wrist. Okay, maximum he pays like a fine or some shit. It'd be really funny if they perp walked him for that.
Didn't think this was the best case that they had, but we are where we are, and this is unprecedented territory.
Katie? Brett, you mentioned the political implications of this, and you go through the list of prosecutors on the federal level who decided not to bring these charges. Just generally speaking, at a time when the country is in a place of distrust of institutions, the political lines have been drawn, it's a very intense political environment. How do you see this moving?
I love the Associated Press using this photo. That's deliberate. You know what I'm saying? They're pulling the Andrew Tate on him with these photos. They're perp walking him like he's Andrew Tate. Are they gonna like shave his head too and not let him, and then make it grow out unevenly and shit? What the fuck? He's going to be in jail for one night and have his pants hemmed and the sleeves cut off his sweats and have a snack stash like the kids at camp on heavyweights. Oh, yeah. Also, he's rich. He doesn't
think that.
Here's the thing. Rich people don't go to jail like fucking poor people do, okay? He goes to jail or he goes to the fucking courts on his own time. So remember that. Rich people also don't see the top of the hour ad break. That's just how it fucking works, because at the top of the hour, there's a 3-minute ad break, and if you no longer want to see those ads, all you need to do is subscribe, which you could do for $5 or for free with a Twitch Prime by connecting your Amazon Prime account to your Twitch account, where you get one free Prime subscription a month, okay? Use it here. You can also get gifted a sub. Sometimes that's what rich people do. Prop65 warning. Thank you for the 5 tier 1 gifted subs, allowing 5 people to no longer see the ads at the top of the hour. Here's a 3-minute ad break now.
This is almost like 2016, where he just commands all the free media. You know what I mean? And everybody laughed about it. They, like Morning Joe and CNN, thought that they were just going to, amplify him so he'll lose. And it didn't turn out that way.
Do I think that Trump getting perp walked is going to benefit him? Absolutely. He's going to look like a bad bitch. But guess what? Ultimately, that's more content. Do you understand? There's nothing I can do about it. And I'm just analyzing it. I'm just laughing at it. Do you understand? And that's what your perspective on the matter should be. Do not take this super seriously. Do not act like this is going to end him or anything like that. We don't know. It's not very likely either. Virtual Meal, Darkest Fortune, and Cam Shron, thank you for the 5 gifted subs.
Sobering and unprecedented development. But if justice demanded that Michael Cohen go to jail for a scheme directed by someone else, justice also requires that the person responsible for directing the scheme must answer for their offenses against the law, and that person is Donald Trump.
True.
Also, just a little bit of color, as you can see, the live shot of the Manhattan DA's office there. We have a reporter on the scene who's describing helicopters already hovering overhead. Several court officers are outside lining up. There's some tension building there. They are saying that Bragg is still in that office right now, as his car is still and parked somewhere around there. So far, none of the Trump lawyers have specifically weighed into Fox on this case at the moment. Jessica, want to jump in there?
I don't care what Adam Schiff has to say. That guy is a total basket case and is responsible for the unjust political
Susie 3 Sheep, thank you for the 5 gifted subs. My food is here. I got to go grab her real quick.
Tried to charge a bodega owner with attempted murder for defending himself. A guy broke into his shop. Luckily, he had a knife and he ended up defending himself. Bragg wanted to throw that man in prison. Bragg lets felons go rape women in this city. It is a disgusting scene at the DA's office, and that man better show up to the cameras and start answering questions about what judgments he made here. And I hope the House Republicans haul his little butt back to Capitol Hill and answer. And so he answers.
Damn, he said he's
to the
fat.
American people about what he's doing here. This cannot stand. I actually agree with Jessica. This doesn't feel right. Something feels terrible.
You know, GOP candidate Vivek Ramaswamy just weighed in, saying very similarly, it will undermine public trust in our electoral system and justice system. He says it's un-American for the ruling party to use police power to arrest.
Dude, you know what's really,
arrest.
Yeah, you know what undermines American trust in the electoral system? Constantly lying about voter fraud to a degree, or constantly lying about how the voter fraud actually ended up stealing the elections and then doing a fucking insurrection that was a failure overall over it. That literally undermines elections. That does. It fucks your side over so hard that like Republicans literally were like, why the fuck am I voting for this shit? It genuinely depresses voter turnout when they feel like the deep state pedophile Democrats are fucking controlling elections.
History. Fox News has learned from 2 law enforcement sources that a grand jury in New York City has indicted former President Donald Trump. This is the first former president or sitting president to face criminal charges. The precise charges not currently known, but the case is focused on a hush money payment to a porn actress during his 2016
That's the funniest part, that they have
campaign.
to reveal the details every single time.
This is a moment that will shake up the 2024 race, but again, is historic. We've never seen anything like this before. Let's get the latest now from senior correspondent Laura Engel, live in New York. Good evening, Laura.
Good evening, Brett. And as you can see there, our cameras are downtown at that courthouse. Fox News can confirm that a Manhattan grand jury has voted to indict former President Donald Trump, as you mentioned, the first former U.S. president to be charged criminally. The 23 grand...
I'm not going to lie. This is going to fire up the schizo base a little bit, I think. Like, do I think this is something that the regular Republicans give a shit about all that much? Maybe not. A lot of them are in a holding pattern, voters, I mean, where they're just like looking to see what happens in the primaries, right? But the schizo base is like, oh my God. Like, I can see them trying to blow up the courthouse or some shit. I hope that that doesn't happen, but.
Mom, I want a vape. Mom, I want a vape.
Illegal. You go to jail for that because of Trump.
During a rally in Waco Saturday, Trump, who is again running for president, claimed he's under investigation for something that is not a crime, not a misdemeanor, not an affair. The felony indictment is under seal, and we expect to get more details on the charges in the coming days. Trump's attorneys will likely negotiate with the district attorney some sort of plan to have the former president surrender and be arraigned in downtown Manhattan. A lawyer for Trump told us that she doesn't know when he would surrender. Now, Trump is also facing 3 other criminal investigations, including efforts to overturn the 2020 election, keeping classified documents at Mar-a-Lago, and the January 6th Capitol riot. We will bring you more as we get it here in New York. Brett.
Okay, Laura, thank you. Let's go to Fox News chief legal correspondent and anchor of Fox News Sunday, Shannon Bream. Good evening, Shannon. Just moments ago, Eric Trump relaying that this was a third world prosecutorial misconduct, reacting to the word of the indictment. It is shocking, and it is not something that I think people expected at 5:28 on a Thursday after what we've been seeing in recent days.
Yeah, I think you're right. It is the first of its kind. This is the first time in history we are indicting a former president. So we are in totally new territory here. And Alvin Bragg has been warned by people right, center, and left that they are worried that what he's done with this case is going to look like nothing but political maneuvering when it comes time to actually get a conviction. An indictment is one thing, a conviction is another. You heard the former president talk about this in Waco. He says there's a new tool in the bag against me. It is prosecutorial discretion. Nobody wants to be indicted, but he is certainly.
Let's take a look at what Trump had to say about this.
Unusual situation that's taking place. And again, legal scholars can't believe what they're witnessing. And yet, after going over 11 million pages of documents, I built a great company. They've got nothing. They've got nothing. Think of it. 11 million pages. And my tax returns on top of it, and they're a big return. It probably makes me the most innocent man in the history of our country. Friends of mine say that. You will be vindicated.
Not my enemies, just friends of mine. They say that, believe me.
Works. It'll be up to New York jurors now.
All right, Shannon, stand by if you would. Let's bring in George Washington University Law School professor Jonathan Turley. Jonathan, heard some reaction from you. It is quite something to see this moment, and it's really historic, this moment that we're facing.
It is. It's historic. It's not necessarily good history that is being made. It's not that I oppose the indictment of a former president. I don't even oppose the indictment of a sitting president on constitutional basis. But this indictment, it is reportedly following the theory that we've been talking about, is political. It's a raw political prosecution. Now, the indictment may come out with a crime that none of us have heard of, but for many months, this bootstrapping theory has been put out there. This idea that you could take a misdemeanor under New York law that has expired, that has a 2-year statute of limitations, and revive it.
I love the expiration on it, because, like, you literally couldn't fucking indict him because he was a sitting president. Like, what do you mean? You can't, what the fuck?
Bragg's own predecessor declined to prosecute.
Yeah, they tried to do it while he was the president. You were like, you can't fucking indict a sitting president. Shut the fuck up.
Into a state case. And if that is the basis for the indictment, I think it's rather outrageous. I think it's legally pathetic.
Looking live at Mar-a-Lago, Palm Beach, residence for the former president. I want to read just a paragraph from the New York Times documenting of this in this story. It says, on Thursday, the 3 lead prosecutors on the Trump investigation walked into the building where the grand jury was sitting in the minutes before the panel was scheduled to meet at 2 p.m. One of them carried a copy of the penal law with Post-it notes visible, which was likely used to read the criminal statutes to the grand jurors before they voted. About 3 hours later, the prosecutors walked into the court clerk's office through a back door to begin the process of filing the indictment. As you rightly point out, Jonathan, the federal prosecutors in the Southern District of New York chose not to go down this road with this case. The Federal Election Commission chose not to go down this road with this case.
I can't wait for them to like use incredible like legal, like absolutely insane fucking legal counters here to, instead of like addressing the facts of the matter, they're going to say stuff like, well, how could a grand jury ever not be tarnished? Because it's the president, and he was a very polarizing figure. A jury of his peers? Well, Trump is unmatchable. He is the greatest superhero of all time. There is no peer. But, you know what I mean? They should throw this grand jury indictment in the trash because, again, you cannot have a peer. Not have anyone be unbiased against our Lord and Savior Donald Trump. Shit like that. They're going to do it, and it's going to be really fun to watch, in my opinion.
John Edwards arguing that hush money paid to another woman who bore a child out of that relationship.
Oh, yeah, John Edwards
was in fact a campaign.
That one is legit.
Violation. That was a much stronger case, but they lost. And the reason they lost
He's right about this.
Even if you can bootstrap that dead misdemeanor into something alive, you're essentially arguing a federal case that the Department of Justice declined. But it's also a case that requires you to show if that is the basis of this indictment, that Trump's his sole motive for paying this money or having third parties pay it was for the election.
Yeah.
Well, that's the problem from Edwards. There's a host of reasons why a
he can say he did this.
Married individual would want
Yeah,
to.
you can say this, that he paid the hush money for not just like this campaign, but actually he paid the hush money to protect himself.
Negotiation that's going to happen.
To protect his marriage.
The dealing with the Secret Service, the fingerprinting, the photograph. We've been through kind of speculation about this. But one last thing on the legal case. You talked about how this is new as far as its construct. And judges would have to evaluate that not only first on the case itself, but then if you got to a conviction on an appeal that could last for a very long time. Meantime, there are other federal cases that perhaps are stronger if you are really going after the former president. The federal case in Georgia about election interference, and not to mention the special counsel and the January 6th investigation.
Yeah, and look, Bragg is.
If I was Trump, I'd be pissed that Fox News keeps saying that, by the way. I'd be like, dude, shut the fuck up. Why do you keep telling him that there are better cases out there?
Theory, which is the only one that's been discussed publicly, that is unprecedented. And I expect that New York judges will have.
What's unprecedented is that you can have a president. You can have a president with like better cases elsewhere, both at the DOJ level or at another state. That's unprecedented. It's wild that we're like, well, you know, if you really wanted to throw him in jail, you could have used the Georgia one. Or the January 6th committee. It's like, what? Like, how unhinged are we as a fucking nation that the former president has better cases that you can use to throw him in jail than the current one that just indicted him? And no one sits around and goes, that's kind of fucked up. That's weird, bro.
Committee, and he says that this is, quote,
it's true,
outrageous.
By the way. It is true. Those guys on Fox News are saying truthful things right now.
We've also heard from Andy Biggs, Republican from Arizona, somebody who has been a staunch defender of the former president. He says that this is Trump derangement syndrome. Meantime, on the other side of the aisle, you have Pete Aguilar. He's the chair of the House Democratic Caucus, and he says it's long overdue for the American people to see him be held accountable. Let's bring him to justice. Tom Tillis, Republican senator from North Carolina, says that this indictment doesn't pass the smell test. And then Adam Schiff, the former chairman of the Intelligence Committee, also he was the lead impeachment manager during the first impeachment trial. He says that this is deeply and fundamentally necessary to preserve the rule of law. Now, tomorrow was the deadline for these three House committee chairs. I mentioned Jim Jordan. We also had Brian Stile. He's the chair of the House Administration Committee, which has jurisdiction over federal elections. And also James Comer, Republican of Kentucky, who deals with the Oversight Committee. They had another deadline for tomorrow to get information from Alvin Bragg. They want to know what money is being spent on this investigation. They also want to know if he's been talking to the Justice Department. They want to understand the scope. They're saying, look, you're a local DA in one borough in Manhattan, New York. How can you deal with a former president of the United States?
Dude, God, Trump is such a fucking awesome character, dude. I mean, he really fucked shit up, but like, this is awesome. Like, I mean, look at how many different ways you can celebrate this. How hot is he going to look in his mugshot? He is a mugshouty. He is a mugshouty.
They were not going to comment on this until they actually saw official paperwork from the DA. So Democrats, to some degree, and we saw this a couple of weeks ago, Brett, when there was this, swirl, this conjecture that it was imminent that there was going to be an indictment here. The Democrats were more than happy just to kind of sit this out and let Republicans go to bat for the president. They were kind of viewing this from a political lens or through a political lens and say, look, if you guys want to go and defend former President Trump, somebody who's been through 2 impeachment trials, the riot, all these other things here, go do it. We're just going to sit that out and let the American
impeachment
people
survivors.
So the reaction coming in here on Capitol Hill. I should note that just a couple of hours ago, this was the final session for 2 weeks. We're on the Easter Passover recess here, and the Capitol is basically a ghost town after about 3:30, 4 o'clock. There's nobody here. That would be a different scene. You would have press conferences, people chasing, reporters chasing members up and down the hall, but nobody is here. Everybody has gone home. They went to the airport. They got on the train. And so all this reaction is kind of delayed. It's going to be a slow reaction here from Capitol Hill because nobody is on Capitol Hill right now, Brett.
Yeah, these motherfuckers are the worst, bro. They just never work. They're just openly fucking admitting that he won. Oh yeah, he really did. He did. This is a day. This is yet another fucking day full of W's for liberals on Twitter. I hate to see it. I hate to say it, but every annoying fucking lib, every resistance lib that has popped off on the timeline should be celebrating. Really, it didn't happen last time. I don't know why. There it is. Ha 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 ha. Oops. I mean, how terrible for Donald Trump. Jeff Tiedrich. He did it. He fucking did it, man. You won, Jeff. You got him. Just a little bit. Just have fun with it, is my point. Do I think that he's going to go to jail over this? No. Does it matter? Will it, I hope, piss off the Republicans? I hope so.
To go down this road. But, Alvin Bragg, there were kind of two volleys, Wimbledon-esque back and forth between the House committee chairs and Alvin Bragg over the past 7-8 days. And Alvin Bragg saying, look, you don't have jurisdiction here. It is inappropriate. It is improper for you to get involved in a criminal investigation that I'm conducting in New York City. Historically, Congress has stayed out of those matters, and that's why Alvin Bragg said that this was so extraordinary. You had people like Jamie Raskin, the Democrat from Maryland, who's the top Democrat on the Oversight Committee, saying as much and kind of going to bat for Bragg. So it's unclear. And partly it's unclear, Brett, because this is such uncharted territory. We have never really been here before with an indicted president, let alone with, a House committee or a trio of House committees investigating the DA at that point and wanting him to come and testify, telling him that he is not immune from a subpoena to appear.
Yeah, I love the fucking the Republican Party being like, this is political, so we're gonna make it political. Imagine literally trying to intimidate and investigate a DA that's actively conducting an investigation into a former president of your party. That's wild. That is literally political. Do I think the DA is political? Absolutely. Okay. Do I think this case is political? Of course it is. Donald Trump. Do I still advocate for it? 100%.
Deep state and save our country by putting America first. For that, the political elites and power brokers have weaponized government to try and stop him. They will fail. He will be reelected in the greatest landslide in American history, and together we will all make America great again. This is Taylor Budowich, CEO of Make America Great Again, Inc. Let's bring in White House correspondent Peter Doocy, live from the North Lawn. I assume the White House is not going down this road as of yet. Good evening, Peter.
They're not. I asked a few officials here at the White House, Brett, if they had any comment on this indictment, if they were going to have any comment on this indictment tonight, and I got a real short response back. It just said, we don't. If there is some kind of a Biden brief.
I love this because what Peter Doocy is doing here and what everyone else is doing in the media right now, especially in right-wing media, is basically gray name chatters that come in and bait me. Whenever something is happening, they'll be like, Hasan, your silence on this matter is deafening. They're literally trying to bait the White House into saying something so they can fucking be like, look at how political this is. And the White House so far, of course, is not dumb enough to literally come out and say anything. Okay. So they're not saying anything
Yet. And recently, officials here have talked about this.
But they're trying. They're trying so hard to bait them.
There are sensitivities because Donald Trump is already a candidate for 2024, and President Biden intends to become a candidate. So they try to avoid Hatch Act considerations or be respectful of Hatch Act considerations. But there are some questions that they have not been able to avoid. They've told us that they are not aware. They've told us within the last week and a half, they're not aware of any threats tied to political or threats of political violence tied to the Trump, the possibility of a Trump indictment. They've also said that if people are going to protest, it's important to this administration that they protest peacefully. But you get the sense
the far right fell off.
Officials here and listening to what they say privately and publicly, that they don't really want to talk about this. They think that they've got a good thing going, contrasting their record with Republicans on Capitol Hill. They would rather talk about the issues. You don't see President Biden go out and talk about anything but his budget and his agenda. So it seems like they're going to try as hard as they can here at the White House to keep the focus on things that the president would be doing if there was no indictment. Tomorrow he's going to go to Mississippi to survey storm damage. It's entirely possible that we don't hear anything directly from President Biden for several days about this. And it would seem that that is how officials that are in charge of the message here would like to keep it for as long as possible. Brett.
Peter Ducey, live on the North Lawn. Peter, thank you. Senior national correspondent Rich Edson has been reaching out to the candidates running against the former president for the 2024 nomination on the GOP side. Rich, what are you hearing?
Well, not so much, Brett, at least not much of a reaction in the way. First off, the Trump campaign hasn't said anything about this. You read the statement from the super PAC that's supporting Donald Trump in his bid for the presidency, but nothing specifically from the campaign or from Donald Trump himself yet on social media. You've also got Nikki Haley, his
react harder, White House,
during his administration. Her campaign has not gotten back to us. We've reached out to them for some reaction. Former Vice President Mike Pence, who is mulling a run, he has not gotten back to us either, though we have seen something from the former Secretary of State Mike Pompeo. He has not said he is running for president, but he has said he is mulling a run, and he said in a tweet that the Manhattan DA, Alvin Bragg, is undermining America's confidence in our legal system. Bragg is the same Soros-funded prosecutor who refuses to prosecute violent crimes. Prosecuting serious crimes keeps Americans safe, but political prosecution...
You know what's funny? They're not wrong when they say that. Because the American criminal justice system is not supposed to throw like rich people and powerful people or right-wing people in general in jail. Okay, unless they're like meth head Nazis that blew up shot at Transformers at another fucking power facility or something, right? Like the American criminal justice system is operated under the assumption, has always operated under the assumption that like if you're rich, if you're white, if you're powerful, like unless you fuck over other rich people like pretty aggressively, you're probably not ever going to suffer legal consequences for your actions. So with that in mind, they're not wrong when they say this undermines our confidence in the criminal justice system. Like, this guy's not supposed to go to jail. Like, he's not poor. He's not black. He's not brown. That's crazy. Like, he's not supposed to ever withstand any kind of legal scrutiny.
Got a statement from the former president, so it's fairly lengthy, but I'll read it here because we're looking for reaction from him. We'll put up some pictures of him as I read this. This is a statement by Donald J. Trump, 45th President of the United States of America. This is political persecution and election interference at the highest level in history. From the time I came down the golden escalator at Trump Tower, and even before I was sworn in as your president of the United States, the radical left Democrats, the enemy of the hard-working men and women of this country, have been engaged in a witch hunt to destroy the Make America Great Again movement. You remember it just like I do. Russia, 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 the Mueller hoax, Ukraine, Ukraine, Ukraine. Impeachment hoax 1, impeachment hoax 2, the illegal and unconstitutional Mar-a-Lago raid, and now this. The Democrats have lied, cheated, and stolen in their obsession with trying to get Trump, but now they've done the unthinkable, indicting a completely innocent person in an act of blatant election interference. Never before in our nation's history has this been done. The Democrats have cheated countless times over the decades, including spying on my campaign, but weaponizing our justice system to punish a political opponent who just so happens to be a president of the United States and by far the leading Republican candidate for president has never happened before.
He's ever. Like
Manhattan DA Alvin.
He had to hit one for DeSantis in there too.
George Soros is a disgrace. Going on. saying rather than stopping the unprecedented crime wave taking over New York City, he's doing Joe Biden's dirty work, ignoring the murders and burglaries and assaults he should be focused on. This is how Bragg spends his time. I believe this witch hunt will backfire massively on Joe Biden. The American people realize exactly what the radical left Democrats are doing here. Everyone can see it. So our movement and our party, united and strong, will first defeat Alvin Bragg, and then we will defeat Joe Biden, and we are going to throw every last one of these crooked Democrats out of office so we can make America great again. Again, that is a complete statement from Donald J. Trump.
It's so sad that Trump can't even get his fucking supporters out there. The only people are like resistance libs that are like 75 years old.
President, current, former, sitting, to be charged with a crime. According to law enforcement sources, the indictment was filed this afternoon, late this afternoon.
I'm telling you,
by
man.
the Manhattan District Attorney's Office and prosecutors in that office after a grand jury vote. We don't, again, have specifics of these charges, but
I'm
it is
not even
tied to
kidding.
this,
Dude, he is
hush money
fucking
payment,
falling off, brother.
To a porn actress that was made in the 2016, leading up to the 2016 presidential election. This is what the focus has been, but again, we don't have the specifics. But there you hear a very lengthy statement by the former president of the United States. Let's bring in our panel. Harold Ford Jr., former Tennessee congressman, co-host of The Five, Molly Hemingway, editor-in-chief at The Federalist, and Vince Colonnese, WMAL Washington talk radio host and editorial director at The Daily Caller. Molly, let me start with you. Your reaction to this day, the president's comments there, and where this heads.
Well, it's a very dark day. One of the things that we cared about in this country for a very long time was to be a nation ruled by law and not by men. This ushers in what will probably be a very dark era of political persecution and prosecution, the type that we normally associate with the Soviet Union or with banana republics. You know, during the Stalin era, it was common to say, show me the man and I'll find you the crime. It didn't matter, you know, whether someone had broken any law. They would figure out a way to charge and convict them of that for political opponents. And you see this all the time in third world countries where political opponents who are deemed a threat to the current regime are charged with crimes. This is not good for this country. It is very...
Trump supporters are afraid of cities. They're not going to New York. Dude, you're crazy. Like, I mean, part of the reason why there's not a big enough crowd forming out there for Trump supporters at this time is because, like, the grand jury debated everybody. If you recall, originally they were like, there was a will they, won't they type situation where they kept saying like, oh, we're postponing for another day. We're postponing for another day. We're postponing for another day. And then they just out of nowhere said, we're going to postpone for a month. And then 2 days later, boom, dropped it on them. Dropped it on them like a dime, dude. Fucking awesome. Absolute mental shit, lads. Fucking love to see it, lads.
That they were worried about this prosecution going forward. Again, we don't have the specific papers as of yet, but we know from sources it has been
mental fucking strategy.
So I've watched your show, and I agree with Molly in one regard. This is an unfortunate and dark moment. I'd say two or three different things.
They keep saying how dark of a moment it is, and I'm out here like, bro, I can see clearly now the rain has gone. You know what? It's not even fucking raining any longer. You know what I'm saying? Like, what the fuck do you mean?
I think we all suppose or surmise that it has to do with some payments to a porn star. But we don't know.
We read this already
that yet. And I think it's important for Democrats, Republicans alike, particularly political officials, to show a little restraint here until we see it. Perhaps your criticism is warranted on both sides, or at least one side, but we should be careful. Two, I would differ with those who think we don't have one system of justice in this country. We do. And it's predicated on two things. The first is a presumption of innocence for anyone who is indicted. Former President Trump, like anyone, is presumed innocent. Two, the outcome of any criminal trial is based and determined not on politics, but on facts and evidence. And if it's not at the trial court level, it can be overturned at a higher court level, and that's where we determine that, I should say, that's where we guarantee the checks and balances, even in our own judicial system. So I would caution those who believe that President Trump is being politically persecuted here to not persecute our judicial and legal system. We remain a system in a country ruled by laws, and no one, regardless of where they serve, where they live, where they're educated, what their race may be or job may be, is above the law. And by saying that, Brett, I also agree that no one should be subjected to any kind of persecution because of their political views. I'm going to wait and see what this indictment, what the indictment, the contents of the indictment are before commenting any further. But I would agree with all. This is not a good day for the country when a former president of the United States finds himself in this kind of potential legal peril.
Yeah, Harold, I've heard you talk before about this case as we knew it and the facts heading into this day. And you're right to point out, and I've said it 3 or 4 times on this show, that we don't have the specific documentation or how it's laid out by the prosecutors. But we know that the structure of what they were looking at going in. And you raised concerns in another seat on another show earlier than mine about that this was the first case to go forward as opposed to the case in Georgia or the special counsel case or others that perhaps politically you were saying could be different in how it's perceived.
But I give you credit. I wasn't suggesting you. I was just saying that there's some who, on both sides, who are taking either some apparent satisfaction and those who are taking a serious objection. I've said before on other shows and even on your show, if what we believe the structure of this indictment, which the press reports have suggested, and I think a lot of what has been said on this show is by some commentators is largely right, that this could be characterized, if this is something that a misdemeanor being elevated to a criminal charge, I think there is some credence to what's been said. But all I'm saying is I don't know. I want to see the indictment.
It is funny because they don't know, right? So they also keep having to speculate, which we all are technically. So like, what if there is something is like kind of on their minds? Do you want to know why? In any other circumstance, you could very easily unload. You would need no qualifiers. You'd be like, this is fucking bullshit. Like, he's innocent as hell. Why can't they in this circumstance? Because Donald Trump has done a litany of so much illegal bullshit throughout his tenure before he was president, like over and over again, that it doesn't matter. Like, they don't know. He could have just as easily done something in that process where they don't know and they don't want to like look like assholes.
Politicians. We've seen routinely conservatives set upon by federal investigators and prosecutors.
We're all like
We've
Brian
seen people who
Krasenstein
are
on his
praying,
day.
singing church hymns outside of abortion mills, who've been visited by FBI raids. And then we've seen people who have attacked pro-life pregnancy centers around the country. If they ever face justice, it's glacially slow. The effort.
Dude, this literally is like Tucker Carlson's own operation, The Daily Caller, and this is Tucker Carlson's own Michael Knowles. Where do they find these like slimy, wormy fucking Italian dudes that speak with the same exact tone? This is literally Michael Knowles, but for The Daily Caller. What is happening here? It's like blowing my fucking mind. How did they find this guy? It's like, this is actually completely unacceptable.
Every federal investigator who's taken a look at this has turned it down. And now a state prosecutor,
Bro, close your eyes. Close your eyes. Tell me this is not Michael Knowles speaking.
Claim in court that a federal crime has been committed. He's never faced a federal court for that crime. It is an unbelievable abuse of justice, and it's putting the country in a very bad place.
Okay, panel, stand by if you would. Let's bring in Trey Gowdy, former congressman from South Carolina.
The most
knows
fucked
one or two
up
things about the law.
The most
as well.
fucked up
He's on the phone.
haircut. Trigger warning.
Trey, your thoughts on this day, maybe from the legal perspective first.
I've always thought of the four pending investigations that we know about. It was the weakest factually. There's a statute of limitations problem unless you dress it up as a felony. I mean, it really is a misdemeanor that someone put a suit on. which requires another offense and in furtherance of another crime. We don't know what that crime is. We haven't seen the indictment. I just thought it was the wrong prosecutor, the wrong fact pattern.
Hell yeah, Trey
and
Gowdy.
I'm surprised it happened. I do want to say this, though, Brett. This is not the first foray that our country has been through in terms of politicizing our justice system. I remember vividly listening to people.
This is literally Mike Pence before the conversion therapy, by the way. Like, just straight
Before
up.
a jury found her guilty, and then they chant the same thing about President Trump. We don't lock people up in this country that haven't been indicted or convicted. So both sides, frankly, have done it. And as a former prosecutor, I'm tired of that, but I'm also tired of prosecutors who decide which laws they're going to enforce and which ones they will not. Prostitution, Alvin Bragg says he will not pursue.
How is misusing campaign funds illegally only a misdemeanor? I mean, think about it. Think about why. Think about it this way, okay? Straw donations land you in jail, but misusing campaign funds don't. I wonder why. Well, one, because they've already made it legal to just like dump unlimited funds into any campaign you want by way of dark money, super PACs, right? So if you're stupid enough, Dinesh D'Souza, to like actually do straw donations because you're a fucking dumbass and you didn't know how to do a 501c4 or anything like that, then you go to jail. Well, you don't go to jail if you misuse campaign funds, usually. Hillary Clinton didn't go to jail. Barack Obama didn't go to jail. I believe I'm sure the George W. Bush campaign probably also did this as well. Like, there are every single political campaign has, in so many different circumstances, misused campaign funds. Not to the same degree, but misused campaign funds in the same way where they're like, they write themselves an IOU or something like that. You know what I mean? Or they mismanage it. What do they do in that situation? They pay a fine. Okay? They pay a fine. That's why it's considered a misdemeanor. I mean, that's the reason why it's considered a misdemeanor is because it's, it's the people that are going to be the most powerful that will actually be doing the bidding of the most powerful people, right? Like the actually powerful people. You can't throw them in jail for shit like that. That's why it's a misdemeanor. Yeah, it's like when Congress gets caught doing insider trading. You know what I mean? Or when a really wealthy person gets caught doing insider trading, like Elon Musk. It's literally just like a slap on the wrist because the system is not designed to ever throw people that are profoundly wealthy in jail. That is just how this works.
But politics never waits on all of the facts. The jury does, but politics does not. So read the indictment. God forbid we actually watch the presentation of evidence. And then we can debate selective prosecution. I think the hurdle that's hard to get over here, Brett, is many of us recall Alvin Bragg's day one memo. All the laws I'm going to...
But like from what I understand, as far as we know, as far as what everyone has speculated on Trump's charges, technically, if he had filed the hush money, if he had filed like the in-between funds that went to Michael Cohen, who actually did do the hush money, if they had filed that correctly, this would not even be a thing. Like, he would not be indicted at all.
The two DOJ investigations into the former president being run by special counsel Jack Smith. Jack Smith was appointed by Attorney General Merrick Garland in November to look at the president's potential involvement in efforts to overturn the 2020 election. He's also looking into those documents that were found at Mar-a-Lago, where the president lives. About 10,000 documents, a little bit more than that, taken around 100, we are told by Justice Department sources, that were marked that had.
Why didn't Trump pay the porn star with his own money? That way it wouldn't have been a crime. Great question. It's because Donald Trump is not as rich as you think he is. And I don't think he's ever been that rich. He's a con man, or he could literally be just a straight up fucking con man, which he is. And like, that's a very con man thing to do. He's like, yeah, I got all these funds. Let's use them. Who cares?
few days ago. There's now a fight. The former president is trying to stop his aides, Mark Meadows. There's also an effort to get former Vice President Mike Pence and potential 2024 contender Mike Pence to testify before the grand jury. And, you know, another interesting thing, Republicans on Capitol Hill, I heard Chad earlier, Brett, talking a little bit about the fact that they had doubts about Alvin Bragg and what Alvin Bragg could do as far as dealing with a former president and a 2024 candidate. There have also been allegations that Alvin Bragg's office was in contact with the Department of Justice here in Washington, D.C. DOJ officials say this is vehemently false. They have nothing to do with that investigation, and it's out of their purview. Brett.
David Spont. David, thank you. Let's bring in Alina Habba, attorney for former President Trump. Alina, thank you for the time. Let me start with this. Can we definitively say that you've been informed officially of this indictment, and do you have the scope of the indictment from the prosecutors?
No, I do not have the scope from the prosecutors. I'm his civil attorney, obviously.
Bro, also, I have to also mention this, like, I don't know how qualified Alina Habba is as an attorney or whatever, but it's not lost upon me that, like, half of his fucking attorneys are sexy, okay? It's very strange that literally half of his fucking attorneys are just like hot babes, okay? I'm sure they're super qualified, but it is literally, no, I'm serious. Have you never seen it? Trump's attorneys, no, I'm not talking about Michael Cohen and shit. The ones that go on television, are literally either from a like Newsmax type fucking operation that they go on the Trump attorney team, or they literally leave the Trump attorney team and become a Fox News correspondent or some shit like that. It's always like that. It's very weird. No, I'm not talking about Rudy Giuliani. I'm not talking about Michael Cohen. I'm talking about the attorney teams, like, I guess, press-facing side. Trump's attorney teams either are like sexy babes where you're like, what the fuck? What's happening here? Or Rudy Giuliani. And nothing in between.
Surprise. I don't think that would be how I would describe his state of mind. I think that he's disappointed in what has become a sad day for our country.
There was some thought when it was announced that the grand jury was going to pause for a month that perhaps they were going to punt and take some time. And there was reporting that there was some back and forth about whether to move forward with this indictment. Obviously, we are where we are today. Can I ask you about process and how that goes forward? Will there be a negotiation with the Alvin Bragg's office for the former president's surrender, for his transport?
I've been indicated. These thugs and radical left monsters have just indicated the 45th president of the United States of America and the leading Republican candidate by far for the 2024 nomination for president. This is an attack on our country, the likes of which has never been seen before. It is likewise a continuing attack on our once free and fair elections. The USA is now a third world nation, a nation in serious decline. So sad. You know this is him, and you know he was fried and angry when he posted this. God, he is so emotional right now, dude. He needs someone to save him. He needs someone to help him out.
Vindicated, and this will get dismissed, and Alvin Bragg will have to sit here with this, the repercussions of his decision today.
But, I mean, there will be an appearance in some way, shape, or form in the New York City courthouse to do those process things, the fingerprinting and the photograph.
That is my understanding. Yes.
Last thing, you're also facing, obviously, and you rightly point out, you're a civil attorney, but the possibility of other investigations bubbling up. The federal investigation in Georgia about alleging election interference, and that is in a grand jury. And also the special counsel's investigation into January 6th, and also the handling of classified documents. Are there different attorneys dealing with all of those? Is it one team? How are you breaking that down? And do you expect those to come forward in coming weeks?
There are different teams. Obviously, we have an incredible legal team, and I'm fortunate to work with them. There are different teams based on the states or whatever the issues are in investigations.
Trump will likely be arraigned early next week, his defense attorney says.
You highlighting right now, Brett, exactly how many of these grand juries are taking place against President Trump is the exact major problem of politicizing the Justice Departments throughout the country. And hopefully the rest of the country will realize just how corrupt these agencies have become and will become, aware and vote and see that our country is in dire need for reform and, frankly, fair trials and AGs and DAs. And we're lacking that at this moment.
Last thing, I mean, you do see each of these cases differently, though, do you not?
I do. I think that in some ways they're different in terms of what the context is. But quite honestly, Brett, I think they're all based in the same thing, which is selective prosecution by these Soros-backed, in many cases, DAs who are trying to prove in their last effort to prove that they are a far left progressive before they're voted out of their offices. And I think that is really the theme here. We've got Jack Smith, as you mentioned, DA Alvin Bragg. We've got Letitia James, which I handle in New York. These are political figures fighting the leading political candidate. So in many regards, no, they're pretty much the same, and they're all based in nothing. And they're all people trying to find a reason to try and remove Donald Trump as the future president of this country again.
Alina Habba, Donald Trump attorney, we appreciate your time. Thanks for coming on.
True.
Thank you, Brett.
That's real, dude. That's what's
I
happening.
should point out the Georgia investigation is the local DA, Fannie Willis, running that. Let's bring in George Washington University Law School professor again, Jonathan Turley. Jonathan, you've been digesting some of this, and we've been careful to point out that
he's digesting all right
themselves of this indictment, but confirming the indictment and that they have been told that he has been indicted, the former president. The structure of this is quite something, and it is a big moment legally.
It is a big moment, and it's a chilling moment.
Thank you for the 5 gifted
is
subs.
That over months of investigation, we have not heard of other crimes. This is the crime that
Sean Hannity would never burp into the microphone.
Have been debating. It's the crime that's referenced in a book written by one of the
BS, thank you for the 5
who
gifted.
resigned, then published a book about prosecuting Trump. And the concern is that if this theory is actually the basis of the indictment, then this is a rather ignoble moment in history. Donald Trump may be the first former president to be indicted, but if this is the standard, he won't be the last. And it's going to obviously get very fierce in terms of the motions and the litigation ahead of us, and obviously the politics. You know, it's a curious thing, by the way, to lead with this case, because the chaos that is erupting is pretty much the element for Donald Trump. I mean, it's like trying to kill an orca by throwing him into the water. I mean, he's obviously doing well in the polls because Alvin Bragg just gave him a proof positive that the criminal justice system.
The polls haven't even come out since then. What the fuck? What?
We've seen the indictment. We still have to see it. But the history going to the indictment, Bragg ran on prosecuting Trump. So did the New York Attorney General. He had this very public, almost Hamlet-like process where he debated whether he could do this bootstrapping theory. He stopped it for a while and then was pressured to go forward with it. All of that smacks more of politics than prosecutorial discretion.
We're hearing that it's likely that the former president will be arraigned early next week, and we talked a little bit about that with his attorney about the process, which obviously will involve the Secret Service and the transport and the surreal moment of fingerprinting and photographing in a mugshot the former president of the United States. You talked about going first. You don't think that there's coordination here between Bragg and the others who are in the middle of all of this, do you?
No, there didn't have to be because it was being done publicly. The political leaders were actually calling on Bragg not to go forward and to let Georgia possibly take the lead. I actually think Georgia's not that strong of a case, but that doesn't say much. Anything is stronger than this. If we're right about the theory behind the indictment, you couldn't have.
Okay, the Georgia's not that strong of a case statement is insane, okay? This guy teaches law at George Washington University. Wild. What do you mean? He just like very openly said the crime that was recorded on the phone. Like, what the fuck do you mean? He like, the fact that he said the actual number of votes that he needed makes it even funnier. You know what I mean? Like, it's just such a wild fucking thing to defend even.
That's probably the greatest threat that the former president faces. Now, the problem, obviously, with the Bragg indictment is you couldn't have picked a worse jury pool for the former president. And, you know, you could, you know, have a hard time finding many people that have no opinion about Donald Trump in Manhattan.
Dude, it'd be so much cooler if more people actually started going to jail or like got indicted, like more politicians. I actually don't understand why people are not advocates for this. Like, they always say lock him up, lock her up about Hillary Clinton. I'm sitting in the sidelines going, yeah, that would be sick. More, please. I'm actually a fan. I'm actually a fan of this. Please, more indictments for politicians specifically. It's great. It's fire.
Of what they're talking about, and he expressed that frustration publicly this week, which politically adds another layer to that story. But you're saying the legal case on this front perhaps is the best going after the former president.
Yeah, I mean, look, Bragg did fulfill the narrative here. Unless there is some major felony out there that has not been referenced over months of investigation, he is about to give Donald Trump proof of what he has long claimed. The Mar-a-Lago case has become more complex because of the discovery of classified documents in multiple locations related to President Biden. President Biden's explanation of what happened in those documents is very hard to understand, that these documents were then divided and sent to different locations. That's going to make it a more difficult decision for Attorney General Garland when the special counsels come to him, or this particular counsel. But the Department of Justice has emphasized that they're focusing on obstruction, probably even more than possession of classified evidence in that case.
Last thing, Jonathan, how do you think this plays out? You know, in sequence and in...
This has been a big day for the rule of law for white people. White women won a gigantic W today. Gwyneth Paltrow is found innocent in the ski trial incident. And unfortunately for white men, Donald Trump is, he was indicted. So...
to come in next.
The Lord giveth and the Lord taketh.
At the special counsel. The special counsel has a unique schedule problem. The Department of Justice takes the view that, I think the incorrect view, that you can't indict a sitting president, which means if they're going to indict Donald Trump, they better do it before he gets elected again. But that doesn't give them a lot of runway to take off this particular case. But then the election becomes a very odd debate because a president, in my view, can give himself a pardon. And so the election could come down to how people feel about a self-pardon. Donald Trump could run in part on saying, I'm going to pardon myself and go after the deep state.
That is pretty amazing that we're at this moment, and that is how it could play out. Jonathan Turley, we always appreciate your comments. Thank you very much. Let's bring in New York Republican Congresswoman Claudia Tenney. Congresswoman, thanks so much for your time. You know, we were talking about the politics and the moment. Our latest Fox News poll has the former president up 30 points on his nearest contender, the Florida governor, Ron DeSantis, who's obviously not in the race. It's very early, but it's a big lead in the GOP primary. Today, politics aside, as a congresswoman from New York, your thoughts on this indictment and the moves that are being made?
Well, first of all, this is a gross abuse of power. we've known that Alvin Bragg was planning on doing this. This is a guy who I think some of your prior guests mentioned that he would be downgrading in a statement and would not be prosecuting violent crimes. And so now he chooses to abuse power in this way. Had Lee Zeldin been elected, his first act was to fire Alvin Bragg because of his abuse of power. But this is not a surprise to any of us, especially on the Republican side, as we've seen the Democrats completely politicize just about every institution, the FBI, the IRS, the Department of Justice, Homeland Security. You just saw Matt Taibbi testify and have an IRS agent at his door, a really unusual circumstance. And I think a lot of this, and that's the first tier of it. The second tier I see is why this case, and you've seen Jonathan Turley and other experts talking about this being a weak case. Even Alan Dershowitz has made a statement, this is a weak case. But what this case is salacious. It's clickbait. It's something that you can get the attention of a mass number of people to mobilize to try to criticize the president in what I call, I mean, how many impeachments is this? The first impeachment, the second impeachment, the Mueller indictment attempt now, and then you had the January 6th. Now you've got this glorification and exploitation of President Trump's, very strong, well, obviously has 100% name ID. He's a celebrity, and this is great clickbait and great for the Democrats to attack someone that they can't stand, and they lust to see him get the mugshots, to see him go through humiliation they have. But as I agree with Jonathan Turley, this is his arena. Chaos, the limelight, the excitement. He does well in this environment. So I think it could be a mistake on the part of Alvin Bragg and the Democrats.
Yeah, and I want to prepare people. Jonathan Turley talked about what's coming. You're going to see a lot of things legally, a motion to dismiss, prosecutorial misconduct possibilities, a change of venue. All of these things are going to happen legally after you get this arraignment, likely early next week. But politically, Congresswoman, do you believe in the bank shot that some Democrats have said that, sure, get him all the attention, get him all the focus, get him the GOP nomination, because we as Democrats, they say, are in a better position to win the presidency if we're running against Donald Trump?
That's an interesting question. This could actually backfire on them because it may be something that could prevent President Trump from getting the nomination. And then but any of our candidates, I believe, on the Republican side are defeating Joe Biden if he ends up being their candidate. And so I don't see how this is a win-win in any case for the Democrats. And what could be really inglorious is in the event that this case gets dismissed on a procedural ground, such as the statute of limitations has been violated, meaning it's too late to bring a case like this, and the fact that the federal prosecutors have already rejected this case. And it's going to be a real hard climb to, as they say, you can indict the ham sandwich, which is what they're trying to do here, mostly for political exploitation and, as I said, media excitement. But I don't know if this is really going to impact who ends up becoming the nominee. We'll see. We'll see what Iowa had. That's over less than a year actually away, and see what that looks like.
It'll heat up very soon. Congresswoman Claudia Tenney, we appreciate your time on a breaking news night.
Thank you.
Well, speaking of breaking news, let's head to Chad Pergram, congressional correspondent, for some of that. Chad?
I've just talked to a couple of sources here on Capitol Hill about what this does to the House investigation of Alvin Bragg here. I am told that they expect the three committee chairs to take a little bit of a step back over the next couple of days until former President Trump is arraigned. Now, I'm told that they will continue with their investigation because they want to know all the circumstances about this, but they're going to take a little bit of a pause, tap the brakes here a little bit. There is still a deadline for tomorrow for Alvin Bragg to come up with some of the materials about his investigation and the scope of his inquiry. I'm told they do not expect him to comply, but one source said to me, Brett, the deadline is the deadline.
Chad Pergram live on the Hill with the breaking news.
I don't understand because, his lawyers already said to CNN, I don't know if they're wrong or not, but his lawyers already told CNN that they're going to fucking serve the top of the hour ad break at the top of every hour, and how that's a 3-minute ad break. And if you no longer want to see those ads, all you need to do is subscribe, which you can do for $5 or for free with the Twitch Prime. Or you can get gifted a sub if you're lucky. Here's a 3-minute ad break now. No, but all jokes aside, fucking get wrecked. All jokes aside, Trump's attorneys went on CNN and said that they're gonna get arraigned, they're gonna go in next week. What the fuck is this back and forth speculation? I don't get it. Here's a 3-minute ad break now, by the way. Go to jail. You can't indict me. That was a perfect segue. Marjorie's tweeting now. Let's see. Impeach Biden. He's given us every reason in the family banking records and more are giving us receipts. But now that the gloves are off, prosecute any and all crimes. Enough of this witch hunt bullshit. Wait, what? That's awesome. First of all, yes. Secondly, what do you mean prosecute any and all crimes? Yeah. I don't